I've reviewed the original Double Dragon over 2 years ago, so I think it's about frickin' time that I look over its sequel, aptly named Double Dragon 2 The Revenge. It's more of the original game's action with a few other elements added. I'm going to keep this story explanation brief, as there's not much to it you probably haven't already heard before. It's the year 19XX, and supposedly there was a nuclear war. Tons of crime on the streets, a syndicate ruling the city, blah blah frickin' blah. The damsel in distress from the first game, Marion, is flat out killed in this one, instead of being kidnapped. So now Billy and Jimmy set out to take down the Shadow Warriors. The game takes place in about 8 different missions, most of which only encompassing a few minutes of game time. Just like his previous game, the gameplay is a simple beat 'em up, where you go from area to area defeating every enemy you encounter. When you run into a group of thugs, you must beat the living crap out of all of them before you're allowed to continue on. Thankfully, the beat 'em up segments are very smooth, but unfortunately, once again the game is plagued with life and death platforming sections. And in my humble opinion, they're actually worse this time around. I'll talk about some of those areas shortly. The brawler style isn't too much different, but there are a few changes to the formula that may take some getting used to. First off, the experience system from the first game is gone, and as such, you have all of your moves unlocked right from the beginning. Me personally, I enjoyed the experience system, but it's not a huge deal breaker when it gets taken away. Another interesting change is the fighting controls. To change from the A punches and B kicks system, you're now forced to press A to attack to the right and B to attack from the left. This does take some getting used to. You're no longer to decide whether you kick or punch the enemies in front of you. You always punch the enemies that you're facing and kick the enemies that are behind you. I don't know how I feel about this change. I get that most people kick the thugs facing you because you get better range, and because of this, punches usually give you more points. But I feel that punches should have done more damage if they were forced to be used, instead of kicks. I mean, I guess we're stuck with it for this game, but I could say that I'm glad they removed this system for Double Dragon 3. In order to expand on that, let's talk about the larger enemies, such as the Abobos of the game. Sure, you can punch them if you want, but it's not always easy. With those big clunky arms, they easily outrange you if you decide to go toe-to-toe with punches. So the easiest way to defeat these bastards is just to turn around and kick them while your back is turned. This just looks retarded though. There are other attacks that you can use, yet others that Billy learned in the first game are missing. Most notable of these are the elbow that wiped out enemies in a few hits, and the awesome badass sleeping roundhouse kick. Instead, Billy and Jimmy get some fresh new moves. The most important one is the jumping spin kick. By jumping up in the air and pressing the B and A buttons, your character will do the spin kick, which is pretty powerful. The catch to this is that it doesn't always work. So if you can't get it performed, your character will just be jumping around like a fish out of water. At least you still have a standard jump kick attack though. There's also a super special move that you can do if you time them properly. For example, when you jump, as soon as you kneel down after landing you can press A, and Billy will do a super uppercut which will propel your enemy high into the air. There's also a similar move like this for a knee, but I couldn't figure out how to perform it. In addition to the standard brawler sections, you have those awful platforming parts. Where to begin? First off, these shouldn't have been included in the game, because they just feel out of place. You're first introduced to these in the second stage, where you must jump across rooftops to reach a helicopter, which also happens to be trying to shoot you down. Later on, there's a large machine that approaches you, and you have to climb up it to reach the door. A few enemies will come out of it, but trying to actually climb up the machine can be a trial due to the constant steam being released from it. Fast forward a bit to this hellish stage. Who the fuck puts conveyors in a beat 'em up game? Okay, I admit, there were some in Streets of Rage, but there weren't instant deaths in those levels. Those spikes on the ground will kill your character one quick fall. To make it worse, when Billy and Jimmy jump, they hit the ground and kneel for a split second, so you don't regain control quick enough to correct the bad leap. It's all frustrating, and it gets even worse in regards to those damn gears that are rotating around, while spikes somehow get propelled out of the bottom of the screen. To make things even more frustrating, there's no continuing without using cheats. I hate games like this, where there's continues, but they're hidden or secret. Just allow me to frickin' continue instead of playing the easier stages over and over. There's also 3 difficulties, and similar to Streets of Rage 3, the difficulty that you choose determines how much of the game you'll play. Unless you play the final difficulty, the game gets cut off after a certain amount of stages. Thankfully, the challenge to the enemy AI wasn't exactly brutal, so harder difficulties aren't really a challenge. It's more of the traps drain your lives quickly. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's really no need to have a difficulty setting, as it's not entirely noticeable. To further compound the game's issues, the music isn't so hot. It's tolerable, sure, but in the later part of the game, it just gets bad. The worst is sadly the end boss music, which just seems to be a small, repetitive bunch of notes. Sure, once you get past the first form, it gets much better, but it's just not the best NES music I've ever heard. Another slight annoyance that I found by complete accident is that some stages have a bottom ring out-like area. In a nutshell, don't hold the down button near the bottom of the screen, because some areas will allow you to plummet off the platform to your death. Why can't I just go to the bottom safely? One other thing I don't understand. Why does the high score table reset when finishing the game? Because of this, why is there a high score table at all? Isn't the point of it to try beating your previous best, even after finishing the game? Because, I don't know, maybe you want to try completing the game again with a higher score? I don't get it. Double Dragon 2 is often said to be the best game of the NES trilogy, but I just don't see it. It's not a bad game, but in my opinion, it's just not a good game either. The beat-em-up segments are fine enough, but the shitty platforming really ruin it. And the whole level based on traps just puts a stop to the fun. Give it a try if you like old school beat-em-ups and see what you think, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people will not agree with how I'm going to rate it. Final score? 6 out of 10. This is Reaper, on Facebook at facebook.com/ReapersReviews. Happy fragging.